Good evening, everyone. This is a special edition of the Brantford News. Tonight, we honor people who have opposed Zionism, in particular, Zionist imperialism, all right? It's another term that really means communism. And a lot of people don't know that when communism took over Russia, it was more of a Jewish revolution than a Russian one. Alexander Solzhenitsyn said that these people were not Russian, they hated Russians, okay? They were Jewish, all right? So tonight, we point that out, and we also honor the people that fight communism, okay? Now, this is a special edition. Normally we're a pan-Canadian program, but there's a special focus on the sensitivities of Judaism, okay? And I'd like to dedicate this program not only to the recipients of the awards and other people out there, the unsung heroes of fighting against communism, the very thing that caused the worst killings in humanity and recorded human history, all right? 66 million Russians, 6 or 8 million Ukrainians, the First and Second World Wars, things like this, all right? The bankers who are Zionists funded the left wing who are communists. And they were held together by the bond of Jewish supremacy, all right? So, I'm dedicating this to all the people with Jewish DNA that oppose Zionism, all the very good people. And in their honor, or in their spirit, in their goodness, these awards will be presented, because they're all men in this case, we're going to make these awards presented to the Mensches of the Year. All right, it's the Mensch of the Year award. We've got 2 dual winners in Canada, and we have 1 international award to hand out. The Canadian awards will be the Golden Lampshade Awards, otherwise known as the Goldies, mocking the lie of German villainy, the lampshade story. That was goat flesh. They were trying to sell the war to people, okay? And the real people that killed these, the real culprits were the Zionists, all right? Because they controlled all the sides. They even gave Germany their start in exchange for Hitler deporting Jews to Israel instead of killing them. And what they did was they told that, because they didn't have convertibility of their currency, because they were printing their currency in their country, and they went off the gold standard. And what they did was they backed it with labor. And they couldn't convert their currency internationally, so what had to happen was Jews had to buy machinery or some kind of goods in Germany. And what they did through the Havara Company is they exported those into Israel, or into Palestine, and then they sold those goods and they got local currency and they put that into their bank accounts. And that's how the Jews didn't get ripped off for all their money. They converted it through goods into a local currency, through export and resale. And that's how Germany ran their economy. That way they didn't have any kind of a trade deficit, because they're always trading good for good. There was no, these guys out-traded, or they sold us more goods than we sold them. No, it was always an even trade. So that's one of the lies of the war. And I myself have a little bit of DNA in me, not a whole lot, but I've got a bit. And I don't want some future leader to show up and start taking blood tests and remember the day that the Jewish terror groups were throwing people in jail for criticizing Israel and things like that, because that's a very bad thing to do. And it makes Jewish people look very, very bad. It's a very dangerous thing to do, because people fight for their freedom and people die as a result of this. And our soldiers have killed an awful lot of people for the promise of freedom, which we don't really have. All right, so people like James Sears of Your Ward News and Leroy St.Germaine are heroes for standing up for Canadians. And also Alfred Schaefer did the same thing in Germany. Now, had this award been given out in 2018, yes, it would have been a lady that would have won it. And that would have been Alfred's sister. Monica. And Monica ended up in jail there because a Jewish terror group called B'nai B'rith told German authorities that she was on their soil or in a courtroom, and she got arrested. All right, that's my take on the situation, from my best understanding. Everything I'm going to say is in my own opinion here, and I'm going to try not to slander anyone because I lose credibility this way. I'm trying to inform the public, the local public, and the national public. And we don't tell lies here. I'm not always right, but I'm always honest, my friends. So, what happened was, James Sears is the publisher of a newspaper known as Your Ward News. And Leroy St.Germaine is the owner of this newspaper. Now, Leroy's a Métis. And he resents the fact that he's been sentenced to a year of house arrest because he says, this is my country. How come I can't say what I want to say? All right? And James was sentenced to a year in prison. But he's out on bail right now. And he has strict conditions. He can't communicate with the public. So if he tells me something, I can't relay it to you. I wouldn't risk the man's freedom. So what they did was what happened to them was they went down and got convicted for hate speech against Jews and women. All right? In my opinion, the Jews like to hide behind the skirts of women, make it look like, they're doing some chivalrous act, performing a chivalrous act by taking a bad guy off the street who said bad things about women. Well, James was saying inflammatory things to create discussions. And sometimes when I read the paper, I went, whoa, James, what's that? I never talked to him. This is what I thought in my own mind before I ever met the man. But I used to watch interviews with him. I'd think, okay, nice guy on TV. That was a funny thing to write for a nice guy. You know what I mean? It's an interesting thing. But he has this alter ego, his performance artist alter ego known as Dimitri the Lover. He's a masculine character. And James, throughout his writings in the paper and his storytelling, was trying to encourage femininity. Femininity isn't a sign of weakness. I mean, taking care of your little ones. Like, look at a mother bear. Is that a sign of weakness when Mama Bear shows up? I mean, it's over, okay? So the femininity is a strong character trait for women. And feminism is basically just man-hating, it seems. You know what I mean? Where they want women to go their own way. There's also a movement where men want to go their own way. They don't want people to reproduce, it seems, anyway. It's an odd thing. So, now, Alfred Schaeffer, what he did was he was telling people about the supremacy out there and how there's a hierarchy, and he was talking about certain instances in history, like internments, we'll say. We'll keep it very general here. And he was trying to defend the German people against lies. He was presenting his view. Now, it's up to all of us to decide for ourselves what we believe. And every single person that I know that now is, as David Irving put it, a hardcore non-believer, such as myself, everybody believed in it at one time, okay? This story about the German villainy. Things weren't perfect. Like, the Germans executed a couple hundred of their own people for misbehaving, so there was a lot of abuse towards the prisoners, okay? But we won't get into that topic. Now, the newspaper itself. Here's an example of what they were saying. Now, the linchpin of this power is the printing of money. And when I was studying money, I read the name Rothschild over and over again, and it didn't make any sense to me. I used to think it was all racism against Jews and things like this. But as I continued my digging, I came across a document called the Balfour Declaration. And what it is, it's like a bill of sale for Israel to the Zionists. And Mr. Rothschild was, I believe he was a politician as well in England. He was promised the state of Israel. They didn't say why, but everybody knows why. It's because they got America into the war. Now here's a graphic from the newspaper that James used to write to edit. And here's A. Rothschild. I'm not familiar with this gentleman in particular, but it shows a couple of Bank of Canada, or a Bank of Canada governor or governor general, and they're all on strings like puppets. And there's Mr. Mulcair, Mr. Harper, Mr. Trudeau, and a bunch of guys down here, right? I think they're local candidates in James riding, if I'm not mistaken. Now, James has been attacking, on behalf of the Canadian people, the corruption that we see in our nation. And he's been explaining to people why we live poorly. Now, they're not trying to make Nazi fun again or something like that, but the economic system adopted by the Nazis, or pardon me, geez, my apologies, the National Socialists, all right, that's what they were called. The Nazis were, Nazi was a derogatory term made up by a reporter who happened to be Jewish. They took the name from the Social Nationalists called SOZI, and they just made Nazi. To me, it seems like National Zionist. I mean, it's evil if it's, if it's Zionism. Now, James is a nice man. I've met him a couple times, but I mean, look at this. I mean, I don't know if that's kind of an unusual thing, portraying his favorite money fighter besides Hitler, Jesus Christ, because Jesus went into the temple and he used a little bit of violence in the temple because the money changers were ripping people off, okay? And James is kind of a promoter of himself sometimes, but he's a good man, and it's in a funny way. So I like how he does these things. Now, he's also trying to make people lose those hang-ups about certain things like the Confederate flag. You'll notice these people in this picture who are holding a Confederate flag and pretty much wearing it are not white, all right? And he goes into talking about how it was over money and how Lincoln just wanted the money to, fund the country, and he wouldn't let them separate the South. And it was a war of states' rights, not a war of slavery. That's how it started out. They sold it to us as a war against slavery later on. A lot of wars start out a certain way, and then near the end of the war, they change the narrative to make people accept it because they've lost a lot of people. Now, here's some things that people won't want to see, and the regular public won't mind. But the Jewish terror groups that want to throw us in jail and make us afraid to speak our minds, they won't want to see these things. Pardon me. Now you'll notice a lot of these guys aren't apparently German, it seems, right? Because German's more of a white country than anything, right? There's Hitler with some children, and there's him with his dog. He loved animals, apparently. Now look, there's a Sikh people here. They're Indian troops. A couple of black fellows having a really nice time here. Unfortunately, they probably perished in the war because all things, National Socialists had to go. Those guys wanted their own homelands, and the Germans apparently were quite willing to help them beat the imperialist British and the Zionists, who run pretty much everything, including England and North America. And there's all kinds of different people from races here. Another East Indian gentleman. Oh, I believe that's a Chinese gentleman there, fighting for the nationalists against Chairman Mao. And then down here, there's a few officers who are part Jewish as well. And this gentleman here, this man's of particular note. His name was Werner Goldberg, all right? And get this gentleman here was actually the face for a recruiting poster for the German Wehrmacht, all right? So, you've got a half-Jewish German as their poster person for recruiting. All right, kind of makes you wonder what's going on. And like I said, all of us, everybody believed in this stuff. Now, James also dealt with current events. And I was disappointed when he was supporting Trump, although it was kind of funny at the time. I forget what year it was, but it was, I guess it was the year of the rooster, and he said, he showed Trump on the front cover in a pose, and it said, Year of the Cock. It was actually quite funny. Now, here's a picture of Vlad's Nad Save a Sad, okay? James likes to rhyme. He's a bit of a poet that way. And here's him as an Orthodox priest, if that's what they call them. Here's some funny stuff here with Bashir Assad in bed with Trudeau's wife, and I think that's Trump's wife. And basically here it says, we've annexed your wives. And then, Trump complains, and so does Netanyahu. He says some stuff there, and Vladimir Putin says Crimea River, like Crimea. Funny stuff. Excuse me. So, the paper was funny, and it was informative. And you don't have to agree with everything. It's not a matter of hating or loathing it. Sometimes you just don't agree with some of the opinions. And but some of the things are incredibly funny. And what do we have here? We've got, let's see. I'm just trying to give you an idea of what this paper was like. All right? Okay, here are some letters to the editor. Now, his letters to the editor page has a little picture of Stalin here as the editor. Nice, with a little pipe in his mouth. So, here's one of them. It says, we love your little satirical publication here at our seniors apartment complex. One of the fellas distributes it to our flats, and there are always copies in the lounge. I'm in hysterics at some of the stuff in the cartoon photos. Brilliant. All right? And it goes on to say that, let's see. Basically, they talk about a veteran. They weren't sure how he's going to respond to the Nazi stuff. We'll call it the Nazi stuff because it's a popular term. But the guy, after reading it, he said, when we landed at Juno Beach, if any of our guys knew what Trudeau Sr. was going to do, he says, we would have got back on our landing crafts. All right? That's from veterans. They don't like what our government's been up to. All right? And all these laws against the anti-Semitic laws, they're basically protecting the communists, all right? And that's all it is. That's the only reason they're there. And the Jews in question aren't even Semitic, all right? They're white, like me. They're white Jews from Europe, all right? The Arab Jews, as they call them, you can see a video called The Roundworm Children. And when the white European Jews went to Israel or invaded it or whatever you want to call it, immigrated there, someone decided it was a good idea to take 100,000 of the original Semitic Jews, the Bible ones, the real Jews, and treat them with radiation to get rid of roundworm, which would disappear in their later years, like once they became adults, They used to treat it with vinegar and herbs and whatever else, I guess. Excuse me. So it was an invasion from Europe, and they displaced the Semitic Jews. Also, Palestinians are Semites, okay? I'm part Jewish, but I'm 0% Semite. Zip! Okay? It's just a big scam. The communists invented the term, and I forget the gentleman's name, anti-Semitism. All right? It's to create racial hatred. And also, the word racism was created by Leon Trotsky, also known as Lev Davidovich Bronstein. He changed his name to sound Russian, okay, to fool the people. And that whole uprising was fueled by Jewish people and Masons. They worked together, the Zionists. Most Zionists aren't even Jewish, all right? Now, what else do we have here? Now, here's the last issue James put out. This was after his conviction while he was waiting to be sentenced. And this is something else. This shows the Canadian military adopting the principles of National Socialism, and they're throwing up swastikas and things like that at the border, and they're sending people back. Instead of letting people come here willy-nilly, they're sending them back. All right, there's Trudeau in looks like a rainbow turban of some sort with real small shorts on, and that RCMP officer, I believe, is going to be arresting him soon. And by the way, the swastika is a symbol of goodness. You'll find it in Indian culture, even Jewish culture, also Aboriginal culture. I was watching one of those shows where the Pickers shows, and the guy was going to buy some chaps, and the chaps had swastikas on them, all right? And that's what it was. It's a symbol of goodness. Now, I don't know if it was a symbol of goodness for Aboriginals as well, and it's interesting how that symbol made it around the world. Very interesting indeed. All right, so tonight, That's right, we already talked about the fallacy behind the lampshade and the soap as well. That was not true, all right? I'm not going to go into a whole bunch of details on these things because it's not the purpose of the show tonight. It's to make awards, but I wanted to give you some background, okay? And so there it is. James Sears and Leroy St.Germaine. Oh, and also one more word. Leroy had an opportunity to get off easily and to use his Aboriginal background. And Leroy basically said, forget that. I'm being polite about how he said it. Leroy is a stand-up guy. He's definitely one of the lads. And he refused to take a special way out. Definitely a one nation, one people kind of man. All right, what a Canadian. 77 years old, and they threw him in jail for cartoon pictures and trying to warn people about communism. I heard the provincial legislature is trying to pass a law against anti-Semitism. Well, the first law the communists put in place in Russia because they were Jewish was no criticizing the Jews because the government was run by the Jews. Okay? That's what it was. So, that's how it is. Ladies and gentlemen, they're the biggest racists on the planet. They hate everybody that isn't Jewish, all right? Even if you are. They really hate people like me who are part Jewish or whatever that want to speak out, okay? I'm not going to stay silent. This is Canada. Our soldiers didn't fight a war so people with Jewish ancestries or Jewish supremacists can use their terror groups to terrorize Canadians into silence. I haven't said a single thing here that should cause hate against regular Jews. If anything, I'm showing people that we're not all the same. Okay? We refuse the label of Zionist, of Jewish supremacist. All right? I completely hate what they did to humanity, and they're continuing to do this. All right? And I oppose them. All right? So guys like James Sears, Leroy St.Germaine, and Alfred Schaefer, who got 3 years in jail just for speaking out in Germany against this, all right? They've been brainwashed badly in Germany. And then, get this, he got another 18 months because he defended himself in court. You're not allowed to defend yourself in court in Germany. It's supposed to be part of the free world. Well, guess what? It definitely isn't. We've been communized here, all right? Big time. Now, our guys didn't fight, I don't think, so that people can be thrown in prison just because they speak their minds peacefully and just present facts. You know, if the truth brings hate against a group, then maybe that truth should be known by others to warn them, eh? All right? All right, my friends, my name is Leslie Borey, and it's been my pleasure, although a sad one, because every one of the people here that are receiving an award tonight are in prison or prison's pending. James has been sentenced. If he loses his appeal, if he makes one, then I think he will, then he's going to jail for a year. All right? Meanwhile, the media lies to us all the time, and our guys go to fight wars on behalf of Israel and the Zionist bankers, all right? And they die, and then when they come home, they're Zionist following politicians, all right? Controlled by the Zionists, just like the first page I showed you, where they're all like marionettes. And they put the soldiers on the street pretty much, all right? They cut their funding, but they give millions of funding to the Jewish terror groups to throw us in jail for opposing communism, my friends. Communism is the worst thing in this world. It's killed more people than anything, all right? It's worse than AIDS. It's worse than breast cancer. It's worse than anything. These guys killed and murdered children, all right? Like raped and killed them. And they disposed of men and women and children in all kinds of different grotesque ways. If you take all the stories about Germany and you don't even dispute them, and you compare it to what the the communists did, it doesn't even, well, it compares, but it's, the numbers are so much higher in communism. All right? So much higher. And they affect every country in the world. Right now, the only people that don't have a Rothschild's banking system are Syria, North Korea, and Iran. So, there it is, folks. These gentlemen deserve these awards. These things are very inexpensive. They're just trinkets and tokens of things, and this is Alfred's award here. I'll call it the Alfie. And these are the Goldies. All right? Now, be good to each other out there. And don't, oh, I don't need to tell you, you're not stupid. The newspapers make it look like we all hate each other because of our DNA and because of our skin color. Us Canadians are really good people. And those Zionist newspapers, bought and paid for, I'm sure, by the Zionist bankers, this is my opinion, all right, they've been race baiting the nation, and North America, actually Europe as well. They're putting races against each other, all right? And new Canadians should look at this government, look at this system, and realize that if they're going to betray longtime residents, then what's their future going to look like, all right? All right, good day, everyone. Be good to each other out there. Oppose the Zionist-fueled hate. They're the bad guys, and everybody else is just regular people, nice guys. Nice to meet yous. Nice to see you. How's it going, buddy? You know, that's what you see on the street, all right? These guys want us to hate each other so they can sit back and watch us tear each other apart and make money off of it, all right? Reject their hate. All right, my friends, good day to yous all.